What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Elder Scrolls podcast with FudgeMuppet. I'm Scott here with Michael and Drew as always, and today we have an episode dedicated to the Shivering Isles, the Daedric realm of Sheogorath. And we're going to try and keep it a little bit more away from Sheogorath himself and instead discuss the sort of land and lore and history of the area itself and the geography and such. So which one of you fellas would like to take it away?
Well, I guess as much as we don't want to talk about Sheogorath, it is technically part of him, as all Daedric realms are part of the Daedric prince that, created them and is them. I think if you're bringing up the geography and the map, I guess, that we go to in the DLC for Oblivion, it almost looks like a cross-section of a brain.
Yeah.
Which I find quite interesting. If you're looking at a brain side on, it's kind of like a cross-section. And then, of course, as we know, to represent the kind of, I guess, bipolar elements of insane mind, you've got on one hand two polar opposites. So you've got Mania on one side and dementia on the other. And that's how the realm is split into your two different, geographic areas, with the inhabitants in those areas belonging to the theme of it. So on the Mania side, you've got all these really hypothymic, high energy manic people who are highly indulgent, euphoric, and on the dementia side you've got all the kind of like paranoid, evil, kind of like sadistic
melancholy
type,
as well,
and also melancholy, depressive kind of vibes over there, and it's reflected physically very much so in terms of lots of bright colors and lots of kind of drab, darker tones.
Yeah. So his whole theme is like the mind, basically, like the two sides of madness. Sorry, I cut. Drew, what were you going to say?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think it's good that you started off by saying that it's important to distinguish with Planes of Oblivion that they are kind of just extensions of the mind of the god, or just extensions of the god, because with Sheogorath, it's inherently not going to be that simple, because even he doesn't really have full control over his mind, and that's on top of the fact that he was another god slash up until Oblivion was another god. So the kind of the Shivering Isles could take on a much more natural, almost history, even though you could say that they're not subject to time the way the mortal realm is. You can find ruins or whatever in the Shivering Isles, and it all makes sense because you've got these grey marches that happen once every era. So things get burnt down and destroyed and everything starts over. So then you get like a natural history emerging in a Plane of Oblivion, where normally a Plane of Oblivion is much more simple. So I think Shivering Isles is definitely, I'd say, the most interesting of all the realms.
Yeah, well, we could probably start, we probably do have to bring up Sheogorath a bit, but we could clarify that just for everyone who maybe haven't played the Shivering Isles, and you definitely should, but it's originally the realm of order of Jiggalag. So everything, the Shivering Isles being an extension of Sheogorath Insane, we know that the curse that the other Daedric princes put on Jiggalag, who was once this powerful Daedric prince of order, then made him insane, but then Jiggalag would only come back what's the period of time? Every certain period of time, the Grey March. It says every era.
It's not defined. It says every era, but at the same time, I'm fairly sure it says somewhere that it's not specifically Tamrielic eras, like as they pass in our time. So it's undefined.
Yeah.
It's like Shivering Isles eras.
Yeah, it's such a vague sort of thing, but yeah, so that's their kind of, and a way to envision it, if you've watched our previous podcast episodes, is actually kind of like a Kalpic cycle, you can always think, for the Sheogorath. So every time the Grey March comes, it's like a big apocalypse, return to dawn, and then Shivering Isles is reformed in a sort of new way, but still consistent with Sheogorath. So Sheogorath has to come back and rebuild his realm every single time the Grey March happens. And this all continues to happen until we get to the hero of Kvatch at the end of the Third Era, who actually ends up mantling Sheogorath and preventing the Grey March from happening, and basically severs the being. So Jiggalag's no longer part of the curse anymore, but has the Sheogorath curse on him, so he's a separate Daedric prince now, but the hero of Kvatch has mantled the cursed part, the Sheogorath. He's become Sheogorath.
Yeah.
So-
Or is mantling him, I guess. It's like you become him, but not like to the full extent.
Well, that's
in actual gameplay, at least.
Yeah, well, that's the kind of idea is why that whoever your hero of Kvatch was in, race or gender or whatnot, has the same appearance in Skyrim, is because you over time as you walk like them, you become them until you really do become them. So it's almost like the hero of Kvatch doesn't really exist anymore. It is Sheogorath. Like that's the dominant part of the outside little Easter egg mentions.
And that's the thing with Jiggalag becoming Sheogorath and the realm changing as a result. You almost have this element of like an ancient history to the Shivering Isles, because you had this this library of Jiggalag, which I can't remember the exact description, but essentially had all of the predicted actions of every single Daedra and mortal ever to live. And then Sheogorath burned it all down. The only remnant of Jiggalag's time in control is his Chamberlain Dias, who has been kind of like forced to endure forever, hidden in this library, and that's kind of all that remains of the past.
Yeah. And then I guess if we go back to the geography, just to paint the picture a bit more, in the center you've got New Sheoth. So you've got this whole area like this, basically the capital of the Shivering Isles, the seat of Lord Sheogorath, and that's where the realm is kind of divided into. Like there's the city there, which is divided in two as well.
Yeah. It's Bliss on Mania and what was the other one?
Crucible.
That's
Crucible.
Because, if you look at Crucible in the terms of like a trial or tribulation, then it kind of fits, like the definition fits as well as Bliss fits for Mania.
And it's not in the very center. It is on the east side, but it's halfway down the map, so that each side of the city like that is split into the two different parts. And of course, as we know, they have their respective Daedra guards. You've got the Mazkin, or the Dark Seducers, in Crucible, and also the rest of Dementia, and the Golden Saints in Bliss and the rest of Mania. And both of them then kind of go up into the palace there where Sheogorath resides with Haskill, and from there it's split into two with the Duke of Mania and his part of the castle area, I suppose, and the Duchess of Dementia, Sil, on the Dementia side.
Yeah, we should also make a mention that we covered the Mazkin and Oriel like extensively in a previous podcast episode, so we won't go into them too much because there's a lot of cool stuff there in that we had in that discussion. But yeah, so that's the setup. The other component outside of the sort of like other settlements and the nature and stuff, which we'll get to, is the whole pass wall area, which is in the fringe basically. So there's, once you enter the Shivering Isles, you're in this essentially like gated area, this like pre-entry that has this big flesh Atronach type creature called the Gatekeeper, which is guarding the pass unless you have like the credentials or whatnot, or you're able
if you're
to kill
mad
it.
enough. Yeah, it's like a waiting room until you become truly insane enough to pass through the threshold into the
I don't know if you
Isles.
guys, have you ever watched the movie Labyrinth with David Bowie and like the Jim
It's been
Henson
a long
movie and stuff?
time, but it's a good
Yeah.
film. Yeah.
So I really like that film, but it gives me it reminds me a lot of the Shivering Isles and the way Shivering Isles is done, and it's also a lot of the concept art and stuff. I guess the Grummites kind of remind me of the goblins and so on, but it's kind of got that like, I don't know, it's just that real whimsical kind of feel to it, which I actually really, really enjoy. Like, I know I've kind of like talked about how like Sheogorath to me is really like overrated. I hear people like, oh, it's my favorite prince, all that kind of stuff. But I really like Sheogorath. What sells him the most for me is the Shivering Isles itself. It's the actual place. Like if you took away the Shivering Isles, like, and being able to explore that location, I'd be far less interested in Sheogorath.
He would feel a bit more like Sanguine. Like if you just went to a shrine of Sheogorath and he said, go do this insane nonsensical thing, it'd still be really cool. Like, I mean, even before the DLC in Oblivion, he was cool, like with his quest, but nowhere near as cool as when you could actually, use the portal and the Nibbin to go into his realm and just, fall in love with it all.
I guess we also have to mention that what's interesting, more so uniquely interesting from what we know, that the Shivering Isles seems to be just have a lot of mortals. Like New Sheoth is a primarily mortal population area. Do you know what I mean? Like, rather than like, you know, there's other places like the Fields of Regret have like, you know, like Scarfin and stuff inhabited in there, and there's Dremora clans in other places, and there's even references to like Daedric cities and so on. But it's kind of like they seem to be the home of primarily Daedra, whereas. And I guess there's like, you know, in the ash pits, there might be some orcs that come in the afterlife, so on, but it's kind of like mortals that have died. And I know it's kind of a mortals dying.
Sorry,
game.
I was just going to say, it's kind of like the mortal trappings of the civilization on Tamriel as you know it. Like, there's shopkeepers, there's a blacksmith, there's a, you know, curiosities kind of museum.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of different people that have different desires and interplay with one another based on, you know, all the different things. But then on top of that, they're all nuts in their own special way. You know, there's sickly Bernice and her kind of in Crucible. There's is it Dumac Grabonk, I think is the name of the amber blacksmith, which we'll get into eventually.
And there's
just so much going on. They even have like the jail system is big, unique, but they've got one.
It's Big Forks in there, isn't it? The guy that likes the Big Fork, Argonian. I forget, not Big Fork. The Argonian guy that was obsessed with forks in Morrowind is in the Shivering Isles. I forgot his exact name.
Big Head.
Big Head.
He likes the fork. Yeah, the fork of horripilation.
Yeah. But I guess we can also. Do you want to start talking about some of the nature first? Some more of the like, you know, creatures and different kinds of things there.
I mean, we can. There's nothing stopping us. Obviously, outside the city, whichever way you go, you've got very fittingly giant mushrooms stretching to the sky in all directions. Obviously, the ones in Mania are a lot more colorful. And a lot of the trees here have an entrance that you can go in, and you can delve around in them and explore as kind of the in-game dungeons. But they have this root system that goes underground, and these roots are so powerful that they literally push through, you know, massive amounts of rock and dirt, and this kind of creates, does create the unique amber found in the Shivering Isles.
I love the part too that says it's theorized that the root is a single organism which draws the color from dementia and transplants it to mania. Like, that's just a really
that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. And that's where amber comes from. And amber is used to forge the, you know, powerful amber armor and weapons with the secret techniques of the blacksmith in Bliss.
And as we talked, I talked about in a amber video that did just on the armor type. It seems that Shivering Isles amber is like, it's different. It's this sap thing. It's completely different to like amber as in just some normal fossilized resin that you'd find in the mortal world.
Yeah. The problem is in Skyrim's Creation Club, they implemented, you know, some Shivering Isles stuff with amber and basically just made it like normal amber. One
other little thing I just want to like, because we were talking about the roots and the plants, and obviously you're going to see that there's, you know, if you've ever been to the Shivering Isles, there's lots of like mushrooms and big root system and stuff like that. But if you look at it, it looks quite psychedelic. Like it's kind of like, you know, based on all the things like, you know, that, you know, LSD, magic mushrooms, that kind of stuff, and combined with the, you know, the cut section of the map looking like cut section of the brain, like everything, it really is this like insane psychedelic kind of vibe. Like you're gonna have the elytra, which are these insects that are native to the Shivering Isles, and that's what they get the feldew from, which is another kind of like, you know, euphoric drug.
Those specific elytra in I think it's called Dunroot Burrow have it. Not all of them.
Yeah, but it's a cool.
And
sorry,
yeah. I was going to say, and that's a really potent drug that is you know.
Well, the Duke of Mania, Théoden, is right into it. Right?
Into feldew. He's into.
Or am I confusing them?
He's into green moat.
Green moats. I mixed them up.
So this is the confusing thing, understandably. So there's two psychedelic. Oh well, I guess you could just say two substances that are both green. So you've got green moat and you've got what did we just say? Literally, feldew. You've got green moat and feldew. They both have different effects. Green moat is found in like some of the smaller, like just mushrooms around the place. But the thing about it is that's unrefined green moat and supposedly doesn't really do anything. But the refined green moat, which is what you see in the massive silo in kind of like the basement in the Duke of Mania area is super potent, powerful, and dangerous, and you can overdose on that, and your heart literally explodes, and you die. And that's how that's actually involved in the ritual of a successor for a Duke of Mania. So they have a grand feast where the one who's leaving overdoses and dies, and then the successor takes his blood into the church. And we'll get into more of that kind of stuff. But I mean, yeah, there's a lot of psychedelics. That's green mote. Feldew has some really addictive substances effects. So the first time you have it, you get addicted. Like first time you consume it, no matter what, and withdrawals kick in into after 90 seconds. Yeah. And then you get to increasingly worse stages in further 45-second increments, and it can even change what you look like. So you'll remember there's a dungeon you go through where the Feldew is, but then you end up coming into like an actual place with mortals that's not just a root system. Like it's, I don't know, what would you call it? It's a room with beds and stuff, like an actual stone dungeon. And there's the Chalice of Reversal there to cure the addiction, which they're all guarding. And they've also got a copy of the Lusty Argonian Maid. But their faces are all mucked up. Like completely. They did a special faces for them.
Right.
In the DLC, like their nose will be off sideways, one eye's up here, one's down there.
Something I vaguely remember. I haven't actually replayed the Shivering Isles in a long time.
Yeah, and I mean, you can miss it too, depending on what you do in the story.
Yeah.
But basically, you get to this ruinous addicted stage where you have -15 to all of your attributes and your health. And eventually, though, once you reverse it and permanently cure the addiction, you can then consume Feldew to get +5 to intelligence, strength, and agility, and +20 to health and magicka from then on. Yeah. So it's a powerful artifact, but you wouldn't want to have the Feldew, which is, again, produced by these Elytra in Dunroot Burrow. Yeah. And they can also walk on water, by the way. Elytra, all of them.
Huh.
If you run away from an Elytra while you're playing the Shivering Isles and you think you're going to swim under the water, they like just run on the top, which is pretty cool.
Well, while we're on the topic of water and... Well, are you going somewhere else with this?
This was purely part of geography. Is this a big... Are you
I was going to segue into Grummites because water and native creature to the area.
Yeah,
but did you want to go somewhere else? Yeah,
take it away.
All right, we'll talk about, like, you'll notice that they have this sort of, Shivering Isles has their, like, equivalent of, I guess, a goblin. So they have, like, little sort of tribal societies called Grummites, which are like these fishy sort of amphibious looking things. And these are what reminded me of some of the goblins from Labyrinth and so on. And especially if you look at some of the concept art for Shivering Isles, which is really, really cool. Like, some of it's not used, but they had like Grummites dressed as butlers for Shivering for Sheogorath. He had like, and I just think it's such a cool sort of idea. It reminds me of like Jareth and his goblins. But anyway, there's an interesting evolutionary cycle here where it's believed that basically they start off as polywogs, and then they polywogs, and then they turn into ballywogs, which you can actually see, and they're the little they basically look like a Grummite but on all fours and with a lizard tail and gills and stuff. And they're in the lakes and rivers and stuff, and you can find them. But then up from that's the Grummite, and the Grummite has all of these sort of social like tribal kind of social things, and they have their own like weapons and outfits and so on.
Yeah, they've even got totem poles and stuff like that.
Yeah,
they are one of those misunderstood kind of like, they have a culture. They're kind of like goblins in a way.
Yeah,
not saying they are goblins, but same kind of vibe.
Well, now, I think there's a good reason for that vibe as well, because like there's a contradiction I've dealt with a lot when talking about the Daedra of I highlight the idea that the Daedra don't create, they mimic, yet the Shivering Isles kind of contradicts a lot of that because there's so many interesting, seemingly completely native species. But when you say a Grummite looks like a goblin, it's almost like Sheogorath has looked at the mortal realm on hallucinogenics. He's having a good trip and a bad trip. His mind is all over the place, and it like he's almost mimicking a goblin or something. That's just a random example, and comes up with these demented creatures and this demented looking place. that is in a way a reflection of real things, but from a completely unique lens.
I like that idea. That's cool.
And what's interesting that I didn't know is that there's, I'll have to double check the sources, but that, you know, those scalons, the big lizards, that they're actually related as well, like a final form of some, which
so they say that believed to be developed from an adult balawog, actually.
Okay. So they it can be either
like,
Grummite or scalon.
Yeah, it's like, what item did you give it in Pokemon?
Yeah, it's
before you made it
Poliwrath
evolve?
or Politoed.
Yeah. But like the Grummites are pretty cool. Like if you go to the US page and scroll down, you can see some of the concept arts for them. And yeah, there's the butler one, the Grummite servant butler one. They're cool. And smoked ballywog legs are
But do you remember though, with the scalon, like a lot of the lore behind that being related to Grummites is it's somewhat questionable. Like you can believe it, but it's not like for example, they're in the Grummites card category in Legends.
One thing,
and they're also like believed to develop from an adult Balawog is like an in-game rumor you can hear. So it's not like, and then there's an out of lore reference as well.
one extra thing is the there's this spawn mother, which is a type of Grummite, which is very little is known because it's basically just a Legends card. But if you do scroll down and look at the Legends card for Spawn Mother, it does sort of look more like a Scalon kind of thing. So
yeah, this is a Legends card, eh?
Yeah.
Like the Spawn Mother is just huge.
Yeah. Because these all come from the Shivering Isles expansion that they did, which has got some really cool art.
Yeah, and if anything, you can actually see that the Scalons tend to look just a little bit more like Grummites in the Legends card art, like the way that their face and their outer lips are pulled out and down. It looks, I don't know, to me, they look more related in the card art than they do in game.
Yeah. It's kind of, by the way, like, I don't know really where they fall, because it's kind of hard to tell, like, whether they are Daedra or whether they are just, like, by virtue of being something native to the Shivering Isles. Like, everything's kind of,
I mean, they're technically
Daedric.
Daedra.
But then again, they're sort of like, do you know what I mean? It feels different to them, to which we can segue to is some of the other inhabitants. Like, obviously,
even Elytra, as we were talking about, they don't feel like Daedra. They feel like if you use the Banish Daedra spell on them, you wouldn't expect it to work. In the same way that you can pick up a Grummite's dagger and say this is formed from things in Sheogorath's realm, which is technically Sheogorath, but you wouldn't be like, this dagger is a Daedric artifact or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's a bit questionable. It's like, are the people born there also Daedra? Like if two mortals in the Shivering Isle breed,
and they
that is native to the Shivering Isles doesn't mean it's a...
True.
I don't know.
I know what you're getting
I guess
at.
that's not the best example, actually, but you know what I mean.
It's complicated, and if you have if you recognize Lorcan as a Daedric prince and Mundus is his Daedric realm, then it all goes out.
They're all Daedra.
But what's interesting in the Shivering Isles, I think by comparison to a lot of other places, he actually seems to have a few of Daedra from other places. So like, you know, Mazkin and Auriel both, from what we sort of researched and looked at in our podcast, weren't native to the Shivering Isles. They seem to have sort of decided to serve Sheogorath in the Shivering Isles. And also, like, the Hungers are associated mainly with Boethia, but they're all throughout the Shivering Isles as well.
They have a huge presence in the Shivering Isles. Hungers have, like, plenty of statues built, like, off buildings for them. Like, all the shop signs, I think it's in Crucible. It could even be in both.
Oh, aren't there like
both sides of it?
Statues too, like statuettes?
Yeah,
of
the
them
statues that actually serve as traps that shoot out a orange magical spell to damage you. There are heaps of Hungers. You can really imagine them as a Shivering Isles based creature.
Yeah,
like their presence is super strong. Even the is it the zealots? I think it's the heretics. Actually, the heretics summon them.
Yeah.
So this is the mages living, kind of the hostile mages living on the Mania side of things, will actually summon Hungers as their preferred spell.
Yeah. I guess the last thing I'll just mention, like I'm trying to think of other unique geographical features, but there is the Hill of Suicides, where people who kill themselves, suicide, they get stuck on this hill as ghosts forever.
And there's a quest where someone asks you to push him from the top of a ledge so that he won't go there. I think.
Yeah.
That would make sense.
Yeah.
Like he wants to die, but he doesn't want to go there. So he says, "Oh, I'll be standing on the edge of this ledge. Please don't push me off," kind of. And you go give him his wish. I mean, there are other creatures as well that we should probably mention, like the shambles, which is more like you can imagine as a Daedra, I guess, kind of. It's like a bunch of bone lashed together with cloth.
They kind of
they trigger a frost damage effect, and you can summon them.
Might be useful just to pull up a list of creatures in the Shivering Isles. See if we.
There is a bestiary.
Yeah, I've got it. I've got it up. The shambles.
Yeah,
they're like a undead construct. They're basically like a grenade, to be honest, because when they die, they do area frost damage. So I remember summoning them all the time, knowing they'd get killed, but I didn't care because they would run in or around a corner even, and then do a little bit of damage, get defeated, and then basically erupt for a bunch of frost damage.
Yeah.
Can you associate them with the other kind of flesh creatures of the Shivering Isles, would you say, or not really?
I wouldn't. I would put them more in the category of like bone creatures, like a bone colossus from Elder Scrolls Online or something like that. For me, a flesh-based creature needs to be literally made of flesh. So the flesh atronachs, potentially skinned hounds, things like that.
Yeah, well, you can kind of imagine, I guess, one, like, how Relmina Verum is, made the flesh atronachs and made the gatekeeper and so on. I could imagine, like, she makes the skinned hounds and shambles. Like, these are, like, kind of, like, runaway experiments from her place.
Absolutely. I did a big investigation into it when I recommend everyone check out The Secret Mysteries of Flesh Magic, which was a video I made. Basically, if you go and look, it's not that easy to see. I had to use, like, the toggle free cam. But they actually do have a kind of stitched up appearance, and they have nails hammered in all over their body. So they quite literally do seem to be created. And Relmina in her, what's her dungeon called? Zarselm, she's got skinned hounds in there. So I can only imagine she's been working on them. I mean, she has been doing other experiments with them.
Yeah,
like that's confirmed. She'll do different things, like take out blood of something and put it in something else and see what happens.
Yeah, I like that idea that you kind of like, if you're doing weird enough stuff, you can get an invite from Sheogorath to take it to the Shivering Isles, because it is a weird dynamic having, like for a lot of Daedric realms, if a mortal's going to go there, it's their spirit in the afterlife, whereas it tends to be more living mortals go there. And then if you do find their spirits or souls disconnected from their bodies, it's in a much more kind of sinister, I don't want to be here kind of way, like the Hill of Suicides.
Yeah. I mean, she's, if I just clarify for everyone, she was pulled out from Tamriel. She was part of the Mages Guild. And she basically discovered what she calls the sixth element, which is flesh magic. And obviously she had a bunch of similar experiments to those that she conducts in the Shivering Isles DLC, which are all dark and involve lots of pain and torture, basically. And so she got expelled, but Sheogorath was like, hey, come on in, because he liked it. He doesn't really understand it, though. If you talk to him, he doesn't understand it. He just likes it. And so he pulled her in, and they seem to have a kind of a relationship-ish thing going on, or at least she has some unreturned affection towards him that's extreme.
I feel like Relmina would have had an interesting relationship with the Dwemer, because she's kind of getting onto some similar ideas there of like creating life in a very unique way that kind of in a way is defying the natural order of things and defying the gods, flesh versus automatons. But
I mean, it is different but similar themed. I can imagine, like, she wasn't the first one to deal with flesh magic. Like Manamako, so this is the thing, in Oblivion they're all like, oh, flesh magic, it's so unique, and then they put it in Elder Scrolls Online and they're like, actually Manamako's been doing it before, but the difference is that they are quite different. I mean, she calls hers true flesh, whether or not that's because hers is better or real, but in the Elder Scrolls Online you can see flesh Atronachs and flesh Colossi, but they're not as unique looking. They look much more, and there's the lab, they're like stitched together blobs of flesh. They don't have any of these special markings that Realmina has carved into them. They don't have anything to do with void essence or any of these special substances that you see around the place where Realmina's doing her work. There's no rituals with all these complex ingredients like with the Gatekeeper. You actually make your own flesh Atronach, and kind of like a projection or ghost of Abnar Tharn, who is a powerful battle mage, says to you like, oh, a child of 5 could do it. Like, and then you just go over to this necromancy book. They use necromancy magic as well, which is kind of different. Like, you can assume they're related, but it's a bit different. And you go like, ooh, over a ritual book, and you spawn this like small flesh Atronach to help you get through a certain door that's got a barrier on it. But I see it as different. And check out my video to see why that is. Something to do with imbuing it with Daedra's soul versus mortal soul, or minor Daedric essence, as they say in a book I'm definitely not a fan of.
I always thought flesh colossus was just a euphemism, but it's actually, it's a creature, isn't it? So.
What about the pygmies of the Shivering Isles?
The pygmies?
The pygmies. Secret hidden race. The extinct hidden race.
You want to tell us about it?
There's one line from a chick called Una Armina who says, look closely and you'll see a tiny skull. When you're in this like sort of museum kind of thing. These pygmies used to live in the Shivering Isles until they were all eaten by the Grummites. Poor dears. Yada yada. Goes on. So there was a race of pygmy
I like that it
people.
has its history.
Yeah, exactly. It all kind of ties into that. I mean, like, we're going to get to it, I'm sure, but I'll cut to it now. But like with the Madnosaur, there's the idea that there's a kind of like a fossilized mineral underneath the ground that is, it's like the fossilized soul of dead mortals that lived in the Shivering Isles at some point in time.
It's like fossilized insanity.
Yeah.
And then you build that into an armor, which the perfect version seems to be, I think it's better than Daedric, or it's at least on par with like the base stats of Daedric. So very powerful stuff. And then of course you've got Nerve Shatter, the weapon that the Duchess of Dementia wields, which is part amber, part madness ore, and looks super, super cool.
It's pretty messed up, because it's, in a way it's like using somebody's soul to create an object that you use, and you can imagine there's some like tormented soul who's extremely claustrophobic, and it's just like, I wonder if their soul still has any ability to experience anything once they're hammered into the shape of a piece of armor.
It is said to be supple and flexible and hold a good edge. I'm not sure what the difference is in the Elder Scrolls specifically between a soul and a spirit, but I know the exact quote is like, the mysterious ore is said to have the spirits of ancient souls trapped inside of it.
I've always considered them to be synonymous, but
like kind of the same, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure, but
yeah. I feel like it changes from person to person too, like defining spirit or soul as well, or someone might see the spirit as a component of the soul, but it's a bit...
Well, I guess we should also take a look at the Gatekeeper just quickly, may as well, because he is a flesh magic creation, but he involves a bunch of ingredients that are only found in this garden of flesh and bones that Realmina has toiled so hard in. There's like osseous marrow, dermis membrane, there's a bunch of stuff, right? And again, watch my video to see that. But it is interesting to hear her kind of talk about how she toiled in this garden, and she calls the Gatekeeper, what is it? It's something like the wisdom of Sheogorath's consummation with something about her. Hold on, I'll get you the exact quote. Consummation.
The Gatekeeper.
Yeah.
We call like Sheogate. Hashtag Sharegate.
While you're getting that, one thing I like about the... go for it.
Oh, the gatekeeper is my child, the consummation of Sheogorath's wisdom in the womb of my genius. It was a painful and a bloody birth, but well worth it. And about her, Sheogorath says how she's a genius and a lunatic and his kind of person. But he says that he calls her a little minx. He's like, she'd do anything for me, that little minx. Send Relmina my love, that'll get her going. And Haskill tells you that her affections cause him a lot of hassle. So
it's like with the gatekeeper there, if the mortals who are in the fringe are just waiting for Sheogorath's gift of madness before they can enter, it's almost like they need to be a certain degree of insane to be willing to kind of walk up to this gatekeeper and walk past him. And that's essentially the test to make sure they're insane enough to become a resident.
Or kill the gatekeeper, which you can do. You can do it. It's hard. The game wants you to do it the proper way, which is to gather Relmina's tears, which are actually its weakness, off a handkerchief.
Yeah.
Or you can do the poison.
Or you can do the arrows.
Yeah, so you can make arrows out of special bone or something.
I think is it the bone of an old gatekeeper? I think that you go with the bone guy together. I vaguely remember it because I'd often have. I'd just kill it because I'm just like that, you know.
Yeah.
Console command kill.
So I guess we could also talk a bit about because we know the Shivering Isles has like its own history, and that's what makes it cool. Part of its lore is it also has this powerful prophet who was known as Arden Saul. And obviously what's interesting about Arden Saul is that the two different I wouldn't call them they're not main groups, but there's these two factions in the Shivering Isle. You've got heretics, you've got zealots. Heretics are on the side of Mania, zealots are on the side of dementia, and they're both basically mage groups who have their own beliefs and secrets and rituals. Even like with the zealots, they have this special power of summoning a flesh atronach, which is something they teach you. But when you join, if you fail the process of joining, I'm pretty sure they kill you. So make sure you nail the job interview, because otherwise you'll be dead. But anyway, Arden Saul.
I could just like the fundamental difference between those two groups is that the heretics believe that Arden Saul is the true ruler of the Shivering Isles, and that he
not Sheogorath.
Yeah, and the zealots believe the reverse.
And only Sheogorath would allow these things to happen in his realm.
It's not the exact reverse. It's a bit more nuanced
I think he's
than that.
Personification of him, right? Like it's kind of like a mortal form of Sheogorath as opposed to
like a Shivering for Sheogorath.
Yes.
Versus Sheogorath needing to be overthrown, that he's simply just a man. That's what the heretics believe.
Technically, the heretics they're both kind of like the heretics are kind of right in the way that Sheogorath, the Greymon, you know how it's like not real. Sheogorath is kind of a false ruler because it's actually kind of Jiggalag. You know what I mean? Like the kind of like you can throw some sort of shade on it, I guess. But then also, I guess the zealots are, like you're not really going to doubt Sheogorath's like divinity. I guess it sounds weird saying that,
but they kind of have two different. You could call them religions, based on his life and his death. And so in the city, in the main city, you've got the scalon, right? And there's a high priest in there that preaches. So the different religious beliefs and their own sides of the story. So Mannix, for example, they believe he was like a writer and an artist, and he loved overindulgence and lavishness and was really abstract. Basically everything that personifies Mania, the manic side is like, yeah, he was like us. And the demented side, that's what it's called, view him as like this disgusting, dark, traitorous kind of deceptive person who, was darker in nature. To them, an all violent kind of person is a good thing. Like paranoia is not a bad thing to those on the dementia side of things. So a murderous person can be a good person in their view of the world. So yeah, essentially they're just trying to both be like their, well, not God, but their the person they're making a deity. Well, is he a god if you believe in something as a god? Doesn't it become a god? Like in the Elder Scrolls, if they
like an idol, I guess. But I mean, and one thing to consider is that they could both be right. You know, part of the reason why Arden Saul is there could be he was bipolar, and maybe that's why people saw a connection between him and Sheogorath. So it kind of naturally
cool
follows.
idea.
Yeah. I mean, so we can talk as well about his So in Manic tradition, Arden Saul had this party at the Scalon that became a massive night of indulgence. Green moat, wine, dancing, poetry, and all pleasures of the flesh that the Manics love was folded into one night. At the climax of the party, so he had 213 followers, according to them.
Mm-hmm.
And they all died. They all died with the green moat, and he died last. And he was in this state of great bliss. And that's why I said earlier they have this tradition when a new duke comes in that they do this little kind of ritual with the feast.
Yeah.
Now, the Demented believe he was so paranoid and suspicious that all of those followers of his were actually like traitors. So he's like, all my followers are traitors. And he wanted to know their true feelings. So he cut out all of their hearts, which is pretty hardcore. And the reason he did that was because he discovered, how do you say it again? Basically, you know, when you cut out people's organs, they have it in all kinds of like movies and novels with witches. They'll like look at intestines and
divining, like,
yeah, I think it's called like visceromancy or something, at least in the Elder Scrolls.
Right.
Let me see. Yeah, visceromancy, the science of divination through the observation of the entrails of others. So summoning his flock to the Scalon, he poisoned the wine to paralyze them, then cut out all of their hearts to find the traitor, and he couldn't find one. So then he tore out his own heart in the anger and realized that he was the traitor destined to kill himself. I think it's really cool, as ridiculous as it sounds. It's like a cool piece of lore.
The quote in the book, furious, he reached into his chest and tore out his own heart. Before the light faded from his eyes, Arden Saul was reported to have realized the ironic truth. He was the traitor, destined to kill himself. It's like, that's the line.
But it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the tradition they have in dementia is is murder, I believe. So the demented succession customarily involves murder of the predecessor, as murder and betrayal are respected themes in dementia. And then, like the heart that he cut out, instead of taking the blood, because in Mania the heart explodes, it's all kind of gross. In dementia, you take the actual physical organ to the altar in the Scalon to become the new Duke or Duchess of dementia.
I most certainly would rather be an inhabitant of Mania and bliss.
Yeah, but they both kind of suck.
Well, I don't have to be Duke and have my heart explode. Like,
yeah.
I could just run a nice little, tavern or something, or do other things, or juggle or something.
Yeah, but you're gonna be insane no matter what. But yeah, definitely, I would rather be on that side of things. This is a random thing, but I've just realized there's a creature we've missed, and it's easy to get it confused with the elytra, but that's the gnarl.
Oh, yeah,
the gnarl are like a moving tree, and these are the ones that you can find with amber on their body.
Yeah.
They look pretty cool. They're in both realms. That's the thing you'll find. A lot of the things are in both sides of the Shivering Isles, but they just differ in appearance. They've got their own different paint jobs, basically, for the different vibes.
Yeah. We can also, I know Drew's itching to talk about Haskill.
I mean, it's kind of hard to say how Haskill fits in so much with the realm itself, as opposed to just being kind of a shadow of Sheogorath, because it's like he described himself as a vestige, as someone who actually mantled Sheogorath in another time, long before. So,
well, that's actually on that. You know the conspiracies or theories podcast we did with all the crazy stuff. There's one far down the list that's like Haskill is the true mad god of the Shivering Isles.
The question is like, so I don't know if he mantled Sheogorath in a previous thing. how does that work? And then I guess that maybe the Grey March came and that split them or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Because the
Not
only
sure
thing
how it
is,
works.
it's like, does that mean that maybe the hero of Kvatch could be like dismantled? Well, I guess there's no Grey March to do it. I don't know. It sounds a little whack, but I guess unless because the condition was that when he mantled Sheogorath previously, but then when the Grey March came about, Sheogorath turns back into Jiggalag, which kind of like pushed the Haskill from him, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So so then Sheogorath is kind of born anew, kind of. But then it's different when the hero of Kvatch came about because he mantled a Sheogorath that was separate from Jiggalag. He separated them successfully and stopped the Grey March curse thing.
Yeah. It's all very complex.
Yeah, it's super complex and super hard. It's just, or is it? No one's really thought about it. Like the developers, they're just like, yeah, this is cool.
Well, he himself says his memory is fragmentary, so he doesn't even know.
Yeah. I do like that Haskill is quite smart as well. I think he talks about the Mazkin as a kind of like highly respected race. Like and that there's more nuance to them than like, you know, meets the eye.
Yeah. What else is there to talk? I feel like pretty much.
I mean, I'll tell you what. If you hit Sheogorath in the Shivering Isles, let me tell you about the jail system. There's 3 places you go for punishment. Okay. It depends which side of Shivering Isles you're in, but the third one is if you attack Sheogorath, he casts a spell on you, sends you into the sky high above the map, so you free fall down into, I think it's called Punishment Point, and you just die. Even with God mode, your character still dies when you hit the ground. There's nothing you can do. But apart from that, you've got these 2 different jail systems, so you can pay off your bounty, I believe. But you can also just be sent to jail, right? And when you get sent to jail, unlike most jails, you can actually press a button to open the door out to leave. But the difference is it's filled with traps and creatures that are going to kill you. So it doesn't differ depending on your punishment. So you can go in and murder a whole town, or you can just steal a cheese wedge. You get the same jail sentence in terms of you escaping. But it's pretty much never worth serving your sentence in that bed, right?
Yeah.
So you've got Icon, which is where you're sent if you're arrested in Mania territory, and the Golden Saints obviously patrol that. And the other one's Corpse Rock Passage, where it's in Dementia. They also give you a container with some food and weapons, so you have a fighting chance, because they still do confiscate your gear.
I tell you what, most of all, I want to know about Sheogorath's tax policy. What was his tax policy? What was his foreign relations like?
I don't know. I can't tell you that, but I can tell you in Icon, some of those rooms are filled with so many traps. They look really cool.
Well, I feel like the few people who can work in the Shivering Isles would have to pay a lot of tax, because pretty much everyone else will have mental health reasons to be needing some help from the old governing body there.
That's very true. That's very true. They're not getting much money, I don't think, off their jail system. It's not working too well.
I guess Sheogorath, he maintains a standing army, for sure.
Yeah, I guess he can call upon them. Yeah. So
what does he do in times of like flood and famine?
I don't know. I think we're getting a bit silly.
And what about these orcs? I don't know if you guys picked up on it, but there's a quote. You know George Arman, the writer of the Game of Thrones thing? He once was talking about Tolkien and stuff like that. And the thing is, but Tolkien doesn't ask the question, what was Aragorn's tax policy? Did he maintain a standing army? What did he do in times of flood and famine? And stuff like that. And I was just like,
obscure meme for the podcast.
Yeah.
It's very weird to compare. Like, I've always found it unusual to compare those worlds just because they're two prolific authors of fantasy.
Yeah.
They're nothing alike in any way, shape, or form.
I just love it when I see it as a meme in like some of the things I look at. I see like, what was his tax policy like? Like, that's the thing I see memes all the time.
Far out. Well, I guess that brings us to the end of the Shivering Isles podcast, unless you two have anything else to say.
I think we pretty much covered it all, and we've definitely...
if you want to know more, definitely check out my video 5 things you may not know about the Shivering Isles. It's pretty thorough with a lot of the stuff we've talked about. And also that flesh magic video I would highly recommend.
And there's plenty of Sheogorath videos on the channel as well.
Oh yeah, we've got a whole video on Haskill as well. And if you want to support what we do here at FudgeMuppet, I'm wearing this FudgeMuppet t-shirt. You can go buy one on Teespring.
Yeah. All
All
right.
right, thanks guys. We will see you next time.